thank you all very, very, very much for coming, and particularly for Andrew, who's our customer here, involved in trying to create this challenge. I'm not going to go through all of these slides. I want to talk to you and answer the questions that are on your minds, but I think I can at least get it started that way. The idea behind Dean's Challenges is to try and put a challenge in front of the community of Harvard that the deans and last year's judges think can be solved with an entrepreneurial attack. So we're trying to put forward ideas where a small group of people, meaning a handful, can make material progress at attacking the problem. Couple of things in that line. Some of the problems that you see will be barely ideas. Some will have already received tens of millions of dollars of funding in someone's lab before they come to a challenge. What we look for in the challenge is, given that you're at stage A, whatever that stage is, do you have a logical progression to stage B? And can participation in the challenge and the spotlight that the challenge puts on your problem do something additional to progress against the problem? So we're trying to get material problems attacked. We've tried to pick problems where small teams can make progress, and we're looking for this idea of additionality. Is our attention to this as a Harvard community going to help move it along, or is it already going to happen all by itself? So those are kind of the thoughts, and let's go into them with one another. So we get together the deans, and typically a group of faculty and a group of alumni, very often judges from prior years' challenges, and we pick a series of topics. And the 4 topic areas here are responsive cities, urban metabolisms, the future of consumption, and aging in place. And those are fairly broad areas in which one might want to launch a venture. We ask you to pick one to launch in, so you don't get to launch in all 4. You have to state which category you're going into. You can also only make one entry. You can't, play the roulette wheel in the whole thing. You have to have one Harvard student on the team in a material role. So you can't have come in off the street as an assembled architecture or landscape firm, recruited a Harvard student in the hall of the library and said, join our team. The Harvard student has to play a material role in the project. And that Harvard student can be anybody from an undergraduate through an academic postdoc. Can be anybody on that spectrum. If you go to the website, and I'll show you the website in a minute, you'll find longer descriptions of what each one of these project areas are. And I would encourage you to look at the website and look at the description. And the descriptions are negotiated between particularly the Dean of the School of Engineering and the Dean of the School of Design, who are the primary sponsors here, to kind of pick up the themes that they think they want to have emphasized in the challenge. So I'll just read one of them. Responsive cities. City dwellers interact with their cities in more responsive and efficient ways than ever before by utilizing personal technology, automated transportation, smart grids, and adaptive materials. New technologies have also created new possibilities for community, culture, democracy, and the shared experience of the city. Can a responsive city be a city that is safer, cleaner, more healthy, more just, more satisfying, and elevating? So when you think about your idea, you should be thinking about, does it tie to that kind of description? And there's similar descriptions for urban metabolisms, for the future of consumption, and for the ideas of aging in place. Most of these themes have kind of a global tone to them, but it's perfectly all right to have a problem that attacks, where you attack something in a specific geography that has no kind of worldwide impact. So if you've got a specific solution that you think works well in rural Nepal, that's perfectly okay. If you've got one that works well in downtown Detroit, it's perfectly okay. So it's primarily, do you have an interesting solution to a material problem? You've got 5 pages to get your argument across. You can use a mixture of words and pictures. You cannot link to things and expect people to judge them. You can't link to another 700 pages someplace else. You can't link to a 2-hour video. You can't link. You can include links that people might go to later, but the judges will read your 5 pages and you can describe yourself there. People say, Jesus, 5 pages is far too short for me to get my important idea across. Yes, it is. It's also the same length you file for an NSF proposal, for a Department of Energy grant, for a grant by the Homeland Department in the United Kingdom. It's a pretty standard length. And so we ask you to get your message across in that mechanism. And we give you kind of the things to cover listed up here that range from a description of the idea, description of the team, and by the way, we don't need 50-page bios. We need 2 or 3 sentences that let the judges know that you might have a right to an opinion about the problem that's being attacked. We want to know how much money has been raised and invested to date, and that's primarily so we can think about projects at different stages of development. And again, in the contest, there will be brand new ideas, and there will be ideas where literally tens of millions of dollars have been invested. And people will be trying to compare them and decide where we can be helpful as Harvard. And then what are you going to do if you win? What are you going to do with the money? Go to the Canary Islands is probably not an okay thing to say, unless your project happens to be based in the Canary Islands. We have guests from the Canary Islands tonight. It's the only reason I thought of the Canary Islands. We are expecting there to be about 50 applicants. We will probably take that pool of applicants down to about 40 for administrative reasons. There will be people who submit, who apply, who don't have a Harvard student on the team in a material role, and we will disqualify them. There will be people who turn in a 30-page document, not a 5-page document. We will disqualify them because primarily that's what the deans have asked us to do. There will be 6 finalist teams that then go to a pool of finalist judges. There will be between 1 and 3 winners, and the prize money can be allocated between those 1 to 3 winners in any manner that the judges see fit. So we have one group of judges that are helping select the final 6, and then another group of judges that are picking the final 3. If you look at the 4 areas, other than putting them in piles for comparative purposes, it is possible that there might be no plan in an area that's worth promoting. It's possible there might be 3 in an area that are worth promoting. And the judges have complete flexibility to kind of do that. So anyway, this is more description of it. We've got about 20 judges recruited. The judges are academics, they are practitioners. They are people who design things, people who finance the designing of things. They are technical people who work on the technology of materials and things of that kind. They're friends of Harvard, not necessarily Harvard graduates, but people who are willing to put in the time to do the judging. And typically judging takes a judge will be asked to put in about 12 hours of time coming up with their final recommendations to the finalists. So it's people who are willing to put in that level of time. I want to talk about this at some length. The judging criteria falls into 3 camps. And then down here on the judging form, there's an open field called advice to the team, and I'll talk about that later. The first criteria, and to some extent by far the most important, is impact. The proposal represents an innovative approach to a major problem that will have substantial and measurable impact once implemented. So there are 2 things that always come up in the impact discussion. Are we helping a small, disadvantaged population a tremendous amount, or are we making a small impact on a large number of people? And there will be both of those scopes of projects may be judged to have high impact. So it'll be kind of the sum of impact that people look at. And they will be looking at proposals where it's concentrated in a particular population. They'll be looking at other proposals where it's spread out over a broader population. we don't expect some of these things will require implementations over 10 years. What we expect to see is a plan that says, if you're here with the idea, the next logical step is here. That might be 6 months or a year from now. Do you have a logical step in mind and an idea about how you're going to make progress against the problem? The other idea here is innovative. If this idea has been done before, if the world knows how to do this kind of thing, the judges probably are not going to be really interested in it. So if it's Teach for America goes to Kenya, that's probably not going to grab anybody's attention because Teach for America is really well known, Kenya is really well known, people know how to do that. They'll be hunting for ideas which are different, ideas which either have to overcome some new kind of problem, if it's a static idea, or relatively novel solutions to attack common problems. How do you measure impact? Quantity is always the deal. I think what the word substantial means is that you've really done something material to solve the problem for the population you address. If you went to a user of the service and you said, what do you think about this? They'd say, man, that was a great thing that got done. As opposed to, oh, I didn't know that anybody really done anything. So they'll be trying to see is a really substantial impact. The team has the skills and commitment necessary to execute the plan and has the ability to acquire complementary talent and resources. And again, you'll have teams which are extremely experienced, and you'll have teams which are quite new at all this. And we'll be looking at the team at the stage that it's at, and are they going to get the talent they need to move to the next stage? Again, the whole idea of commitment necessary to acquire complementary skills is, if you think of nearly any team, it has to evolve materially over the course of a project. Very often from idea-oriented people to completely construction-oriented people. And so you'll be thinking about, as they move to the next step, do they understand the limitations of their team? Do they see what they have to do to add to that team? And are they accepting those limitations and addressing them through recruiting? If you look at most businesses and most ventures, the way they address the plan is they hire somebody. A small number send everybody to work, or send everybody to school. That takes a long time. Usually you fix a venture by bringing someone in who has expertise to address the problem and bring them into the team. The plan reflects a set of realistic structured experiments that the team can execute, which if successful could lead to a financially sustainable business. There are two thoughts here. We want to see you do something that has an outcome where if you succeed with that outcome, people would be confident in backing the venture for yet another step. And if you fail with that outcome, you have good reason to decide that the project should not go forward or you want to launch another experiment. But we're going to work at it really hard and hope that it turns out well. This is a theory, this is a test, this is how we know where we passed or failed. If we pass, this is what we do. If we fail, this is what we do. That kind of thinking in the proposal. Financially sustainable. The thing that makes Dean's challenges different than design competitions or solution competitions that are common across the university is that everything that takes place at the iLab requires the people who enter it to have an idea about how to pay for the venture and keep the venture alive. That can be through donors, but then they've got have to have a plan for donors. It can be through taxation, but then they've got to have a plan for getting that taxation put in place. Or it can be by selling products and services, in which case they've got to have customers in mind and an idea how they're going to collect the money from customers. But we will expect plans to address the financial sustainability of whatever they're trying to pull off. The world today has less and less public money available to simply do things. And increasingly, entrepreneurs who want to bring new ideas to market have to have a way of figuring out how to make the venture cash flow supportable. And a good example of that is Khan Academy, right, which trains a tremendous number of people around the world for free, but then has a stream of donors and a stream of sold services which in fact support Khan Academy. Another one would be Teach for America. Others can just be companies that produce products and services that people want to buy. Finally, just in brief, we've asked the judges, we give each judge somewhere between 5 and 10 plans to judge. In this contest, we hope it can be near 5. It could be that it will be more than that. The judges are assigned to one of the 4 areas: responsive cities, urban metabolisms, future of consumption, aging in place, typically because they have specific expertise in the area. And in our opinion, in their opinion, they can judge plans in that area well. We do that so that they don't have the overhead of learning about an area before they can come to an opinion about a proposal in the area. Beneath this, and I don't think I can show it to you, but there's a pull-down menu that says, do you have any advice for the team? And there we ask them to give you an honest opinion on what they think you should do with the venture. And it can be all the way, and we ask them to say it to you like your students, not like your professionals. So we ask them to not say things like, this is the stupidest thing I ever heard of. But we do ask them to say things like, maybe there's a lot better area for you to spend time on, so that hopefully you can hear it. And give you a short piece of advice that they would give to a student who came forward with this kind of an idea. If they want to, they can reveal their name to you. Otherwise, the identity of all judges is quiet. Or they may have very specific advice. To advance this idea, you should talk to XYZ, in which case they will type it in that. They're under no obligation to type something in. We try to encourage them to do it. So hence a short form. Proposals are judged relative to one another. So they'll have 5 plans, and they'll judge them relative to one another and come to a conclusion about which one should be supported. Let me go one more slide. Just in terms of dates, you need to have your proposal into the iLab by 11:59, which is the new iLab standard time. We think it's shortly after most undergraduates wake up. We're not quite sure about that. We'll announce the finalists in mid-March, and then the finalists will each be given, or each team will be given $5,000, each of the 6 teams, to further develop their proposal for the final round of judging. And then there'll be a demoing day here in the lab where people from around will come to see what's done. In the period between late March and May, there will be a series of experts that are available to the teams to provide advice to them about their projects. So again, thank you very much for coming. I think these are interesting areas. I think they're important areas. The world needs better solutions than it's got. And I encourage you to get together teams and put them in. And with that, why don't I take questions, if anybody has any. You just scratched your eyebrow. Just came for the food. No, I know that. For the company. Yes, ma'am.
So, my name is Ari. Thanks for the...
Yep.
Okay. My question is, so from what I understand, the proposal has to include both the overall vision about what this could be and also what the next step would be, right? So it should be both.
Yep.
We shouldn't just focus on what.
Yeah, I think people want to say, in essence, if I went on this journey, I'd get to an interesting place. And then they want to know, what are you going to do initially?
Right. Okay. And what happens when, let's say, you get to be a finalist, you get the $5,000, and you see that sort of the project somehow has been tweaked in that period? I mean, not changed completely, but maybe you choose to develop one strategy.
Some teams decide the idea is not worth pursuing. They return the money and they go away, no harm, no foul. If you won the money and flew to the Canary Islands, we would be really angry with you.
Right. No. Okay.
So the $5,000 is to help you advance the idea. If the idea is not worth your time, it's not worth our money. And
right.
so,
Yeah. I guess what I was saying is that. I mean, this has to do, I think, with the next logical step that you propose, right?
Yep.
The most logical thing would be that money goes to that step and not to any ancillary.
Yeah, I mean, the money. What can't you do with the money? You can't pay your relatives. You can't do the things that you would think you couldn't do. So
Right.
otherwise we'll get killed, the deans will attack us, there'll be blood on the floor in the iLab, and life will end as we know it, for Neil and I.
I think
But-
just
but-
one point of clarification there. I think there is a natural iterative process in this challenge and other challenges. So as your idea develops within the same realm in which you started, that's to be expected.
Yeah.
But I think if you, as Joe said, if you pivot 1,000% or 360 degrees, and it's an entirely different idea and a different topic area, then that's something outside of the scope or the bounds of this challenge.
But you can migrate pretty broadly in these areas. And again, I think there's some interpretation, and in some cases we go to the judges and say, hey, how do you think we should handle this? The most common one is where team membership changes radically. Somebody suddenly has to go do something else and they need to get somebody else on the team. And in general, we try to accommodate that. Other things here? Yes.
Hi, my name is Jesse.
Hi, Jesse.
I was just wondering, how much of an emphasis do you place on having sort of detailed financial projections, like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, like you might see in, say, a business plan?
I think there's some businesses, some proposals where that makes a lot of sense, and others where it doesn't. Some of the proposals, and let me take it outside this context, are raw bench experiments where the P&L is we need $150,000 to do the following thing with the stem cell. And to have a 5-year P&L is kind of interesting but not useful. I think the pragmatic thing is you got 5 pages and you want to put your best foot forward. We want to know some things, and we've given you kind of a checklist on that. But at the end of the day, the judges will sit, they'll read all that and they'll say, impact, team, plan. And they don't expect you, they expect you to be ambitious and innovative. They expect you to recognize the limitations of your team and have a plan to address that. And then in the plan itself, they want to see that you're going to make progress from N to N+1. And that's what they'll be hunting for.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. But there are businesses, by the way, where a P&L is a great use of one of the slides. Others where it's just not.
For the team portion of it, is it mandatory that all team members be full-time? Or can you have like specialists that you contract and come in?
Sure. I think the big thing is just to describe the relationships. The things that we're really worried about is where there are a bunch of people on the team who are not doing anything. Or a bunch of people on the team who've been recruited for a name but not for a contribution to the product. And that's really what people aren't. They want to know who's going to do the work, and are they committed to following through for the piece that's appropriate.
Okay, so you can have a proposal and a team that's people have done some part-time work on it, but contingent on funding, they'll come on full-time.
Well, or people who are only going to join it for this step and then will leave. There are a number of teams, not so much in this area, but in other contests, where there'll be an academic on the team who has no intention of ever being anything but an academic. And so once the kind of prototype is moved from lab to Unit 1, they're going to go back and teach, and none of us are confused by that. And think that's a good thing to do. Other things? Then another function of tonight is to make sure you guys meet one another. The best way for plans to improve is not for them to be secret, but for you to share the ideas with one another and get criticism from one another about the idea. Most of the time when students come to tell me about new businesses, it's really cool. They come into my office, and the first thing they do is they close the door. Then they're off it. Their voice gets really, really low. And they tell me about their idea. And 99% of those ideas remain in their head and nothing ever happens with them. The ideas that are best are ones where you share with people. You all beat on it with one another. You all probably know as much about this area relative to one another as any other population. And the ideas get better. And so I would encourage you to be open with one another and to get criticism from your peers. If you look at the processes that go on with the finalists, a tremendous amount of the work we do with the finalists here in the iLab is peer review. And that's just a fast way to make progress. Yes?
So you talked about writing a proposal in general, for this competition, but could you highlight for us what kind of key differences that from other competitions like healthcare and et cetera,
Yeah.
that we should be paying attention to?
You're writing it to people who are interested in urban design and in its issues, as opposed to doctors, as opposed to people in arts and culture. So, I mean, the big thing about any proposal is imagine who you're writing it for. Imagine a real life human being, not some synthetic person that does not exist in the real world. And if you put them in front of it, would they be able to do it? Can they assess, I mean, have you given them the information to assess impact? By the way, the best way to do that is you have a little thing in your thing that says, I think the impact from my project will be. As opposed to, here's 5 pages of random words, and if you pick enough letters, you might figure out what the impact is. If you not just kind of clip the bios in, but identify specific skills that you might need to add to the team to make the next material step. And again, people don't want what work are you going to get done in the next 2 weeks. They want to know the next material step of progress, where if you could answer a question positively or negatively, it would lead you to think very differently about the prospects of the business. So it's that. And then again, plan. People, all these people are grown-up people who do this, and they think plans change. They think planning is important. And so they're going to look for you not to have a lot of detail, but to have a few specific things. If I could do this, and this is how I would do it, and this is when I would do it, and this is who I would do it with, that would be the experiment that would lead me to have confidence to move forward with this project. Have you thought about that? And so they'll be hunting for you. But across all the challenges, the best way I know to say it is that the common thing that's used in every challenge, whether it's social and cultural entrepreneurship, health and life sciences, the urban challenge, or the president's challenge, is that you guys are using the scientific method in application. You have a theory, you have an experiment, you have a test that confirms the night, and you have a reaction to that experiment. And it's not much more complicated than that, but it's every bit as elegant as the scientific method is. Some logic and conclusion and measurement. Well, the other reason for you all to be here is to meet one another, so spend some time with one another. Neil, thank you for making this. Thanks.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes. You just yell it. You probably.
Okay, thanks. So I was just reviewing what is on the website, and this is called, right, well, I lost the webpage, but it's whatever, Living Cities 2013, right?
Yes.
Urban Life 2013, 2030. So I wonder, since you speak about like the big picture, your long-term goal maybe, and then the next steps, to what extent are you thinking about what room has a speculation in this process when you project? I mean, if we
I'm
really
sorry, I
read
missed
this,
the word. What was before speculation?
how much room there is for speculation in the proposals in general? I'm just curious about the 2030 part here. I mean, if there's
2030 got picked because people thought 2020 was too soon and 2040 was too far away. I mean, it was literally, I mean, it was that, there's not more elegance than that. But I think the issue, if you have a theory about the future, I mean, there's certain areas where the theory, where it's remarkable, aging is one of those things you can absolutely predict. And we are with absolute certainty around the world not reacting to something that's absolutely predictable. And so in areas of that kind, we have a lot of information about how aging will take place in various places around the world, and in particular about disease burdens and things of that kind that will take place. If you've got a different theory, that would be really, really interesting. Other people will have different theories about how consumption will change. For example, one of the entries that was discussed is the role of collaborative consumption. Airbnb, things of that kind, in terms of how people live in cities. Will people occupy fewer square feet, particularly in Western Europe and the United States? But I think I would have a theory about the future to the extent that you thought it was material in you shaping your venture. Again, if you think it matters a lot, I'd talk about it. If you don't think it matters a lot, I wouldn't. You got 5 pages, and you're writing it for a professional in the design, typically engineering area to read, and keep that customer in mind, that person who's reading it in mind. And the biggest errors that are made is that people don't have a way to crisply define impact. They refuse to recognize the limitations of their teams, and they don't have anything. They have essentially something for a plan that says, we're going to work really, really hard and really enthusiastically, and then a miracle will occur and something good will happen. And that's literally kind of how the thing reads. And I would avoid that. I think people will want to see how you're thinking about impact, how you're thinking about getting the team in place to accomplish what you need to for the next step, not necessarily the one you need for 2030, but the one you might need for 2014 or 15. And then do you have a sensible set of experiments that'll let you drive it forward? Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, there are people, particularly here, who have theories about how China is going to be organized in 20 years. They'll have theories about how the Middle East in particular will be organized in 20 years. And their proposals will be written with those assumptions in mind.
What about projects that one can foresee happening within, say, the next 5 years? Do they still fall into the category of 2030 in a way, given that one sees that
Sure,
they are successful?
sure. I think the rule is if you think it's an interesting proposal and some of the guys you know think it's an interesting proposal, it's probably an interesting proposal. If you don't know anybody else who thinks it's an interesting proposal, I'd think carefully about it. And usually the reason the reason that you'll think it's an interesting proposal and no one else has is you haven't ever shown the proposal to anybody else. Find somebody you trust, show them the proposal and say, is this interesting to you? And particularly in a design studio, in a lab area where you're working, if somebody says it's dumb, take it into account. The strongest proof that judges have that that the project's interesting is that other competent people have said, hey, I want to work on that project. You can recover from a lot of things in life, but the only thing you can't ever get back is time. So if you're willing to invest your time in it, is your only scarce resource, they think pretty highly of it. And by the way, we've run a lot of these challenges now across a lot of areas, and students, as a rule, have high standards for the use of their time. They don't want to work on things that are either pointless or frivolous. There just haven't been many of those. Okay? Have a good evening.